I'm Brian Corrigan. I'm the studio director of the engineering team here at Pubg New York. Pubg is a really hard and complex game. And so, mastery is about being excellent at skills needed to master our game. So when I think about mastery, it's really about two things. The first is for our players to track their skills over the long term. So we track combat skills, and then we track other skills, anything needed to survive. And then the second thing is that it's really a way for us to have a conversation with players a little bit about what we value in the game going forward. So evasion, combat, survival, there's a lot of different techniques to survive Pubg, and it's a way for us at the company to give a nod to each of them.
The most important part was actually defining and conceptualizing what the term survival even meant. Every tactic in Pubg is contextual. Instead of trying to define tactics that in turn defined what good survival is, we trying to recreate the story of the player, trying to track actions that could happen in Pubg.
We did run into some survival mastery engineering issues. And not really issues, but like kind of interesting problems, really. One is capturing all of the data from a game. So you do so much as a player. Like you shoot your gun, you get in a car, you get an engagement with your car, you loot a body, you do all sorts of stuff, right? Like there's so much data there. And we're capturing all of it. Like when I say all of it, I mean all of it. We send that data away when you're in the game, and then we process it, and then we say you've gained 50 XP this match, you leveled up, here's a nameplate, here's a pose, right?
There's certain button styles, certain modal styles, backgrounds, all those things are familiar to the system. It just helps the game feel more polished and more cohesive when you're jumping from tab to tab in the outgame.
The survival tab is the mastery's way of tracking a player's actions, their active decisions in-game, depending on each player's position in that stat compared to the community. The survival mastery system will give you a player trait for that stat.
When you're looking at your player traits, you're gonna say, oh hey, I'm a hot dropper, but like, why do you think I'm a hot dropper, right? It's because the community average is like 40% of people or 30% of people hot drop and the rest don't.
Jin designed it in such a way that it's not meant to be a positive or negative for the player. So the visual side of that needed to reflect that it was nor good or bad that you hot drop or don't hot drop. So we kind of tried to deliver the traits in a neutral way so that it's more stating information to you. And that's not a good or bad thing, right? That's just describing your play style.
There's been a lack of content that enables the player to show off their status and their stats to other players. So the Pubg ID is really one way, and it's really a starting point.
The theme behind the Pubg ID is every player needs this passport to get on the plane, right? You're going into the battlegrounds, and you've got to give this passport to the pilot in order to drop in. It's a booklet that opens up and closes, and they can kind of tweak different things. Certain things are set, and like other players can learn more about you by looking at those things. When we designed the emblem and nameplates, we wanted it to be robust enough that everybody likes something in there. So there's 50 nameplates, 50 emblems, and 5 poses. The idea is these poses are all related to survival mastery and survival as a whole. So some of them are leaning against a crate, which is kind of a survival tactic, and shooting a flare gun, which is also a survival tactic. So this was the concept that we came up with. So it's just kind of this very Pubg moment where you're running away, but the idea is this pan is this almighty, bulletproof pan that kind of saves you once in a while. So it seems fitting that this is the kind of top reward, the little 500 reward for survival.
Another interesting engineering task we had was creating poses. So we had engineers in Madison and in Amsterdam helping us here in New York compose these for the Pubg ID. And I think players will appreciate that they can represent themselves in different ways on their Pubg ID.
So there's a little bit brighter colors for the nameplates. There's some silly emblems, there's some serious emblems, and they kind of stand out amongst the rest of the UI. There were animals, there were silly ones, there were serious ones. There were a lot of biohazard or toxic ones. So you can do these mix and match combinations to really get something that's unique to you. There's like vector ones, which kind of are flat, a little bit grungy, but more solid color. And then there's some 3D ones, which are more realistic and just more artistic as far as illustration goes. So you'll notice that the nameplates and the emblems and the poses are a little bit more flamboyant than the UI, I'd say. And it's because we really wanted to provide a sense of personalization to them. So we just kept building off of that, and we wanted to make this passport the signature item for the player, and that's deemed the Pubg ID.
In addition to the weapons tab that we already have in the system, we have added 2 more tabs, the summary tab and the survival tab. Players are now able to go into the tab and not only look at information about themselves of their last match, but if they decided to play as like a duo or a squad, they can go in and find out information about their teammates too.
Survival revolves around celebration of your last match, and to do that, we chose to use some icons and some line items and locations to kind of build that story out. Our first iteration came up with generic icons with just little circles, right? And there's like different color-coded circles, but it didn't tell the story correctly. So we adapted it and kind of used the actual in-game icon and revives.
So for example, a player might look at the player timeline, and the survival mastery system actually tracks engagements. So it gives you a summary of the total damage given and taken in an engagement.
So if you get shot in the middle of a field, taking damage is an action, but that action kicks off the situation. So for the next 30 seconds, if you do anything that we consider an action, a survival action, it will extend the situation for a longer period of time. And so we try to capture that as an engagement.
And a player might look at this and look at the actions directly preceding the engagement or that happened within the engagement, if these actions actually helped you survive that engagement, or if these individual actions actually were the result of you dying from that engagement.
It could be more than 30 seconds, it could be 5 minutes, it could be a couple minutes, but we're gonna give you survival mastery experience in that time frame based on what the designers have configured for experience values.
I think players can look at this as their own personal coach almost, to look back at their last match and kind of analyze what their last match was about, what kind of decisions they made and what they could have improved from that.
There's really only one way to win a PUBG game today, by getting the chicken, but there's a lot of ways to win by degree. In PUBG, every game is different and every journey is unique. I hope the survival mastery system allows players to further level up their skills, enjoy the process, and enjoy the time they're spending with us. And it's one of the first features we're simultaneously shipping on both console and PC. Here in the New York office, we spend a lot of time on console and PC as well, so we're really excited to make this happen for players. PUBG is a huge global community, but we have our community managers out there listening and speaking with people every day, and your feedback goes directly to us as developers. Survival Mastery System is the first version of what will end up being a much larger system, so your feedback is timely, and we appreciate your help. Thanks.